industrial thing to locate. I mean, you have an industry right now, but when you talk like industrial parks, you get that first one, everything else kind of snowballs, but it does take a while to actually get that first one. So I know it's much easier for me to stand up here and say, hey, go out there and get some industrial development and actually go do it. So I don't want anyone to think that, I definitely know the people in the room, other people in the county, they hear what I'm saying and they're trying their best, and I know it's difficult. But right here, here's the largest taxpayers in 2015 in Nassau County. You can see, besides a couple of them, they're all heavy industry. $150 million for Rock 10, taxable assessed value. It would take about 800 to 1,000 houses to get to that. So I mean, that's substantial. I mean, those are really big numbers that even if you get one more of those in the county, it's something that can actually change your county. Especially in a county that's, not a Dade County where you get an extra $150 million in here. It's a rounding area, but in a county like Nassau County, that's a really big deal. So after that, we kind of want to just look and see what actually has been going on in Nassau County from a development trends. We pulled all this data, and this is the office data. And since 2013, there actually hasn't been any new office deliveries in Nassau County, so that wasn't too good. Just right here, the red lines are actually the inventory that's on the ground. The green lines are the inventory that's added in that particular year. The line graph is absorption, just to kind of, orient you to what the graph actually shows. Retail development trends from 06 to 12. A lot of green bars means there are new things actually added to the county. Not really that bad. Absorption kind of went down, so it kind of meant that you were adding new things, but your vacancy rates were going up, which that was kind of in the middle of the recession, so that would be expected. But really over the last several years, you haven't seen a whole lot of retail development. Industrial development, there hadn't been anything delivered in over 6.5 years, or 6 years or so, since 2009. And actually in 2010, 200,000 square foot of industrial left. So, that's not really that good of a fact. Fiscal impact analysis, just to talk briefly a little bit about this. Actually, what it actually is, every single land use creates revenues and expenditures for local government, regardless of what you are. Revenues come in the form of property taxes, they come in the form of sales taxes, come in the forms of charges for service, and a bunch of other things. Expenditures are parks, fire, police, roads, general government. And at the end of the day, the net fiscal benefit is just simply revenues minus expenditures. And I like to always say it's kind of analogous to your own personal checking account. Whether you make $30,000 a year or you make $300,000 a year, it's not necessarily how much you make, it's the cash flow. So if you make 30 grand a year and you spent 25, well, you got $5,000 in positive cash flow. You make 300 grand a year and you spent 500 grand, you got 200 grand negative cash flow. And obviously you can't sustain that forever and ever. Maybe for a year you can get loans, but eventually it's on the road to bankruptcy. So the model we developed is actually specific just to Nassau County. You can't take this and plug it into Alatra. It's a specific model. It has your local tax data, has your current budget, your local demographics. You took it and want to use it in another county, you'd have to repopulate it. So we're not using something that's just, just generic or whatever for the state of Florida or for the United States. We're using something that was developed just for Nassau County. And this is a useful tool, and it has been used a lot around Florida, around the United States, for any elected officials or county staff that when they make land use decisions or even things that aren't real estate-based decisions, things that just affect your budget. It's always a nice thing. It shouldn't be the end-all be-all, but it's one tool in the toolbox. There are always some qualitative factors, quality of life factors, things like that. So you don't just look at this and say, well, we have to do it because this says it's X. But it certainly should always be something that you look at, just like in your personal life. Money is important in every decision you make. And maybe sometimes you spend a little more than you really wanted to, but you really like that vacation you were going to do. You really like that house. Yeah, it costs 50 grand more, but you wanted it. And that's kind of how I always tell people that, that's okay. You didn't always have to be the one that gives you the biggest impact. But, it certainly can't make a negative impact on you. And you certainly need to be able to afford it. So it's always a really important thing to look at. So these final two slides, what we want to see is we actually took the model, we wanted to apply it to the land uses right here in Nassau County. And at first we wanted to kind of look at everything on kind of an equivalent basis. So we basically said an average house is 2,000 square feet. So we said there's a 2,000 square foot house, there's 2,000 square foot of retail, there's 2,000 square foot of office, and 2,000 square foot of industrial at reasonable valuations. And what we found that at $205,000 for a single family house, the 20-year benefit's about $2,500. So essentially that breaks even, over 20 years. For retail, it's much higher. You're looking at about 21 times that amount, $52,000 over 20 years. For office, you're looking at $30,000 over 20 years. For industrial, you're looking at about $75,000 over 20 years, which is 30 times greater than what a single family house does. So this is kind of the first part of the analysis, put everything on equal footing. But it's not really reality because no one's going to go build a 2,000 square foot industrial place. That's so, but just for a point of reference, we wanted to look at it, make everything the same, and then we wanted to do this, something that's a little more realistic. We looked at a 500 unit residential development. We looked at 1 million square foot of industrial, which I know sounds like a lot, but it's really not for large scale manufacturing. I mean, they need a lot of space. There's a lot of equipment there. And there's countless examples here in Florida and elsewhere where you can easily find 1 million square foot of an industrial complex. And we looked at 200,000 square foot of retail, which would be kind of, one big box building, a bunch of inline and Walgreens, Chili's, Applebee's, out parcels, kind of a larger outdoor type of mall area. So all this would be kind of reasonable for the scale of development that you could possibly see. And again, regular valuations, and what we found, of course, a single family residential development at $205,000 average value of a unit was $175 over 20 years. Again, essentially paid for itself. Now, you got to keep in mind that anything, if the value was less than that, then it wouldn't pay for itself. If it was more than that, then it gives you a little extra. But in this county, right around 205 grand, that's essentially a break-even point on a residential house. The retail, $5.2 million over 20 years. Obviously, a lot higher impact. You have sales taxes that come out of that, along with property taxes. And your industrial at $37 million, and that can really be a game changer. That's a lot higher. And at the end of the day, diversification in your tax base is certainly what you have to try to achieve. I know it's not the easiest thing to do. It's not something that happens overnight. But from my experience and from others, once you get that first project in here, it certainly makes the second and the third project a lot easier. And at the end of the day, it's not only a benefit to the industrial developer or business folks, it's a benefit to the county government and increased tax dollars. It's a benefit to residents as well. I've worked in some small rural counties where they propose some pretty large projects to go in, like power plants and things like that, where the actual millage rate would actually go down. That may not happen in Nassau County just because you got one industrial thing, but it does benefit every single person in the county in one way, shape, or form. So that was pretty much the nuts and bolts of our analysis, what we were asked to do. And we're here to, I think, have a question and answer. Turn it back over to Bob.